Are you in the mood for some nostalgic memories of after-school TV? Then this is the podcast for you. This is Jack's Throwback Attack. Hello and welcome to another edition of my Throwback Attack podcast. Now, in the last edition, I spoke with Brenda Longman about being the voice of Sue the Panda in the Sooty Show. Well, this episode is also a real treat for Sooty fans because I am chatting with none other than Sooty's right-hand man, magician and actor Richard Cadell, about his life and career and how he became the presenter of Sooty, taking over from Matthew Corbett in 1998, and one I think you'll really enjoy. So today it gives me great pleasure to be speaking with Sooty's right-hand man. It's Richard Cadell. Hello.
Hello, it's great to be with you, Jack. And yeah, let's go. Let's talk.
Fantastic stuff. I have got many questions to ask about your life, your career, and of course Sooty as well. So it's going to be a very enjoyable chat. I'm looking forward to this. I have to say, actually, we met a few weeks ago at a one-off Sooty event in Nottingham called Sooty, This Is Your Life. And as a lifelong Sooty fan, I have to say I really enjoyed that show. It was great of you to do that one-off for the older fans. Brilliant stuff.
Thank you. I mean, it was part of the Nottingham Puppet Festival. It was their last event over. They'd had 2 weeks of things in the theatre and all around Nottingham to do with puppets. And I've done panto at the Theatre Royal, and I'm going back there later this year with a magic show. And the manager said, "Please, would you do something?" And I said, "Well, it's an all-adult audience. I can't just do, a Sooty show. Why don't we talk about?" And that's how the show came about. It was a one-off. It was a story of Sooty. You kind of saw, I was very open about the good and the bad, which is why it was not recorded. A lot of the fans said, "Why don't we tape it?" Because but I don't think it would. I didn't want it bottled. It was one of those things you had to be there, and it was great. We showed everybody behind the scenes how things worked, talked about the story, and then we met everybody afterwards. It was a one-off night, and afterwards, a lot of the Sooty family were there, like the people that have been involved with the show for decades. And we all got round and we all had a little drink. We said, "Well, if that's the last thing we all do, we've gone out on a high." Not that it is going to be the last thing, but of that style, we had a great night.
Yeah. Heaven forbid it's the last thing, but yeah, it was fantastic. And for someone like me, because I know you do lots of live shows, and you've recently done the 75th one, and they're designed for children and families. For people like me who I don't have my own children, and I'm 30 years old, I might look a bit odd turning up to one of the normal shows. So it was great for someone like me to geek out for a bit, and I took some of my friends as well, and they loved it.
It was great to see it, but I've got to stop you, Jack. I tell you, when we do the theatre shows, the 70% of the audience is adult, and most adults do come without kids. So listen, you'll be well at home there. You and all the other, geeks, as you said. I didn't use that word, but no, we get loads of adults, and so yeah, that's the magic of this. I mean, unlike any other kids show, it does span all the generations, and it does appeal. Even certainly on stage, it does appeal right now to adults. They chuckle away, and it's unique in that respect.
Yeah, we were chuckling away and enjoyed it very much. And before we go into all the questions, I think you'll notice I'm wearing a Sooty t-shirt. But I have also
you're only little on my screen.
Okay,
you are.
there you
Well,
go.
I've got a few Sooty bits around. I've got a few pictures on the wall, so
I have brought in a few things that I've got actually, because I have these sitting on my I've got like a big chest of drawers in my bedroom, and these have sat on there for a long time. I got these with a Happy Meal from McDonald's about 2001, I think.
Yeah,
like that.
That's it.
So,
yeah, I remember them.
I've still got these, and then I actually I've forgotten I bought this in a charity shop for £2.50. The very first Sooty annual from, I think, 1957 or somewhere around there, I think.
I got one of them as well when Sooty was white. Yeah. Those comic strips. Yeah.
And then
it's wonderful.
My original annual that I had when I was very little from 97. So there we go.
Bless you. Bless you. You're proper hardcore, Jack. You probably know more about this than me. Some of the fans come up and they say, "Oh, do you know this?" And I have to sort of nod and pretend I do. Well, so no, it's brilliant. I love it. I love the fact you love it.
It just genuinely did happen. I was watching Pointless once, and there was a round on Sooty questions, and it's the only time I've known every answer on the board. which was quite, I don't know what. And I do actually remember going on holiday to Blackpool years ago with my then girlfriend, and I said, I must find the plaque. I must find the plaque. She thought I was mad.
Of course, you talk about the plaque on the North Pier, which
Yes.
is the birthplace of Sooty, where Harry Corbett found Sooty in the joke shop. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the famous plaque. Still there, still there.
Happy days. So let's talk about yourself then. So I mean, I understand that you know, your background in performing and all that started from an incredibly young age.
It did, yeah. I mean, I'm in my little office actually. I've got some bits and pieces around. I would have tied it up. I was going to show you, but over there I've got my little. I'll see if I can just. Well, I'll grab some stuff. But there's pictures of me as a kid. I was the young magician of the year when I was 15. But I'd been doing magic and Punch and Judy and ventriloquism since I was about 6 or 7, literally, and working, sort of earning money at it from when I was about 10 or 11, because somebody started to say, well, how much did you charge to come and do magic at the kids' party? And my mum said, oh, you know, you should earn a few extra pence here. You can buy more magic tricks. And then I suddenly realized I could charge for this. So I was working from quite a young age. And yeah, I've gone off on a tangent, haven't I? But yeah, so I was a magician and became the young magician of the year. And when I was 16, I won it when I was 15. And when I was 16, part of the prize was to go on the Sooty show, on the television show, and do a trick for Sooty. I was pretty rubbish, I have to say, though that clip is still on YouTube, which I'm kind of proud of that it's on YouTube. But that was the start of it. I mean, that was how these things in life, these roads cross unexpectedly. And there I was with Matthew Corbett and Brenda Longman in the studio, completely starstruck with people that I grew up watching on television and worshipping the Sooty show. And I was there, stood next to them. Little did I know they'd become, you know, my lifelong friends, and still are to this day. And it's yeah. So anyway,
Yeah, it's a wonderful story, definitely is. So back then you were into magic and that, and I mean you still are a magician. Before you were doing Sooty properly, like from when Matthew retired, you did a lot of very big illusions and stuff like that, didn't you?
Yeah, again, I could get the. I'm going to reach and get pictures when you talk about this stuff. This is my little den in here. I'll grab this off the wall. So yeah, this was me back in, if I can get those shine on it, back in the very early 90s. And it was the first illusion is to do vanishing motorcycle in the air. That was my big stunt, and I still do that actually. I still keep that illusion, which I do in panto and stuff. And that was the making of me was that one big illusion, because nobody was doing things as big as that in this country. You had to go and see David Copperfield in Las Vegas. So I realized if I was going to, you know, make a mark, I had to do something big. So yeah, I had girls in tanks of water and me in tanks of water and chainsaws and massive things. There's lots of it on YouTube still. If you search good, bad and indifferent, if you search Richie Cadell illusions, and some of the old stuff comes up and the new stuff. But yeah, very different to I mean, extremely different to the Sooty show. And when people come and see me do the magic show that I'm touring with in October, I think they're quite shocked to see that but it's so different, and I'm not sort of playing for laughs or being stupid. It's quite a different thing, but I enjoy both things. And ultimately, Sooty is very much about a magic. It's very much a magic thing. It's very much related. Sooty and puppetry and magic are extremely close in the way you have to think and the way you have to present. So
Yeah, absolutely. And because I know in the last couple of years that you have done your large illusions again on your own, how have you found that? Because usually when somebody performs with a puppet, they're usually at risk of being typecast, because famously Rod Hull disliked Emu after a bit and stuff like that. How have you found like doing it without Sooty, and have people been okay with that, or have they been like, well, where's Sooty, or any stuff like that?
The magic is at a different audience. I don't try and trade off the sort of I'm the guy that does Sooty. If you see the circus poster, the current tour's called Cirque de Magique. I mean, I'm there in a tight white top. I think they photoshopped a few muscles on my arms and what have you, and it's a very different sort of image. So there's not the disappointment when they see me without Sooty. But you know what? It's very nice. I love being doing panto. I'm in Woking this year in Sleeping Beauty, and I work for a fabulous pantomime company. They do the best, wonderful pantomimes. they throw everything at it, and it's a joy to be part of them. And they allow me to do my big illusions as well as being the silly Billy or Buttons with Sooty. So I actually get to tick lots of boxes, and people don't expect to see suddenly me riding a motorcycle and doing something a bit that looks a bit dangerous. You know, they love all that surprise. So it does work well. I did a big magic show for the Magic Convention at Blackpool, 5,000 magicians from all over the world. And I'm doing my big serious, you know, Mr. Danger Man motorcycle in the middle of it, because of course they're all expecting Sooty to pop up because they know me for that. So in the middle of it, Sooty right in the middle sort of interrupts and stops it and gets a big laugh. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And he whispered in my ear, and I said, "What's that? You paid for it?" "Yeah, you did." And he did, because I've got these big expensive props. Got a big laugh, and that was all we saw of Sooty. So there is sometimes I have to bring him in just to tick a box, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And in between all of that as well, I do know that you ran fairgrounds for a long time, and you have an interest in amusement arcades. Yeah, I mean, how did that come about, and why that particular business?
Well, again, there's all the homage to all of that in this room. So yeah, I've always been a very, very big operator, not so much arcades, but rides. So I started with the Ghost Train when I was 17, and you know, it's a strange business to be in, the showman sort of side of things. Fairgrounds, they're often families that have been in the generations for years. It's very difficult sort of business to get in, but most of my friends are traveling showmen, and I started at a very young age. I knew a lot of them from as a kid. That's another story. And I started with the Ghost Train, and then my brother joined me, and we bought some more rides, and then we built a park which became Green Theme Park. It's now a big theme park. It was a bit of, you know, nothing more than a few rides and a bit of tarmac when we got there, and we sort of transformed the place. We sold that back in 2014, and that's where we filmed the later episodes of Sooty on our own theme park. Then I sold that in 2014, and now I operate the rides and attractions at Dreamland in Margate, which is a beautiful amusement park, and all the rides in there are all they're all mine. Other than the huge big wooden roller coaster, which is part of a heritage operation, which is wonderful as well. So yeah, I'm still very much in the amusement business. I adore it. I get just as much fun out of fixing a roller coaster or greasing up the waltzer or fiddling around with the Ghost Train than I get as much fun out of that and Sooty. And because I flip between the two businesses, it keeps everything fresh. You know, when I do the Sooty show, I can't wait to get back to Margate or the fun fair. And then when I do the fun fair after, you know, come September, I'm itching to start on the pantomimes, and which is why I always tour in the winter, because my ride operators are Sooty crew. They're puppeteers, they're illusion assistants, and then in the summer they become ride operators. So the guy that is one of the main guys in the motorcycle act, you'll see him all day, every day at Margate running the twister. You know, that's his big thing. But in the wintertime, the pantomimes, he's integral to make the illusion show work. So yeah,
Sounds good. You mentioned earlier that you appeared on Sooty back in 1985 off the back of being the Young Magician of the Year. Just tell us in a bit more detail your memories of that day, you know, turning up, seeing the studio, meeting everyone for the first time, you know, what it was like, and the fact that you had no idea that day was going to change your life forever.
Well, I do remember, and I've got here, this is my Young Magician of the Year trophy, 1983 to 85, Richard Pearson, which is my real name. And there I am with my Punch and Judy. So I do remember it. I was extremely nervous. And I remember Matthew Corbett being, well, do you know what? It's funny. When I got to know him, one of the puppeteers, a great guy called Peter Jagger, said to him, "Watch Matthew. He carries a bag of spanners around with him." And, "What do you mean?" He went, "Well, he doesn't just watch him. He's a bit naughty. He's just a bit of a," and he is, you know. And even on the day when he didn't know me, he was kind of sort of trying to cod corpse me and throw me a bit, and he was really like very funny, but naughty. You know, I was a young kid in that situation, petrified. I mean, you're in a TV studio, and I mean, I think now with the culture of YouTube and people uploading their videos and all the time, and that people aren't frightened to stick their face in a camera and suddenly play to thousands of people. But back in the day, the Sooty show was playing to millions, and the audience were millions. I mean, when I started to go from Sooty and Co, it was 4 million a week, and when Matthew was doing it, it was probably double. So I knew that there was millions going to watch me walk through that door as Santa Claus, and I was petrified. I remember Rod, Jane, and Freddie being in the Thames Theatre Bar after we filmed, and that was a big moment. But also Morecambe and Wise were there. And I was completely starstruck. And Brenda Longman took great pity on me. She was talking to me, and she gave me a lift back to the train station because, I mean, I can't remember if they paid me. It wasn't a paid gig. I wanted, it wasn't about the money. But I know I hadn't got any money, so I would have been walking back to the train station with my little box of tricks. And Brenda gave me a lift back, and we sort of bonded over all of that. And I didn't want it to end. I know that. And Bernie Clifton was there. He was on the show. But I remember it vividly. I remember because I was skint. I was a really hard up little kid. I hadn't done anything. And my jacket, my red shiny jacket, I remember the costume guy came and said, "Excuse me, can we just take your jacket a moment and just we'll bring it back to you." And they love them. They took it and they dry cleaned it and pressed it. And, I mean, it wasn't that it's just, they just took a bit of pity on me, but it worked because 30 years later, when they were toying with who they could get in to maybe take over, there's Matthew Corbett saying, "Well, what about Richard? Do you remember him? What about?" And there was other people involved in the decision. It wasn't always down to Matthew. By that point, he'd sold the business when he retired, so the new owners had a great say in who was going to succeed him. But he did remember, and it did count for something. So I must have made an impression. I think probably more pity than anything. But I remember watching how Matthew did a little thing with bells that appeared on the counter, and he would have to stay very still as they placed these bells in one at a time. And then obviously they'd cut out the bits where the hands were seen placing the bells. And I remember being fascinated by that, and just and how quick they did it. They didn't hang around. It was very fast. They sort of did everything in one take. I think I did the trick once and they did the song once. Now, when I've done my stuff, I'm like, "Oh no, do it again, do it again." We've done some of the stuff 20 times before. I've sort of thought, yeah, that'll do. But I think Matthew, it was I think he was happy with whatever they got. And it was always great. And he just had done it forever, hadn't he? And it's like water off a duck's back, so and as I said, he had this mischievous twinkle in his eye. Right. I mean, still does. He came to see the theatre show a few weeks back, still got it, that little sort of looks at you, and it's very funny man. He's a very, 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 very likable, funny man, and a genius with Sooty. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's doing okay, I believe.
He's doing great. He had a beautiful house in Manchester with his own. When he retired, he sort of sailed around the locks and moors of the British sort of canals and things in his own boat. And they lived right by the canal. And they've moved now. They've come a little bit closer to London, a little bit closer to where everything sort of started, in a very nice area where pace of life is just that little bit slower. And he just enjoys his retirement. He doesn't miss it at all. He was curious. He came to the show out of curiosity, not because he has any regrets whatsoever. Like he said to me when he retired, I remember I said to him, "Are you sad?" And he went, "Well, Richard," he said, "you've got to remember," he said, "the first thing I remember is my dad shaking this teddy bear over my cot. I don't remember anything else other than Sooty, and I'm ready for a break." Now, it's different for me because, you're wearing the T-shirt, you've got the souvenirs. Let me tell you, I've got all the souvenirs, I've got the T-shirts. I'm a big fan. So for me, it was a dream job. It was like, oh my God, I'm doing. This is the gig I dream. I never thought I'd ever get a chance. It's Matthew Corbett's gig. So I came into it all fresh and enthusiastic, as any fan, would. Because he was sort of sick to the death of it, really. It was very much a business for him by the end. He wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't. He didn't love the characters, but it was a business, and he was ready to move on, and the timing was right.
Fair enough. Would you say that because famously Harry Corbett was a lot more romantic with it, and there's that story of him having him in a carry case with air holes in it? Would you say that you were a bit more like Harry in your love of Sooty?
Yes.
Than Matthew? Yeah.
Yeah, and Matthew made no excuses about he was a very, very savvy businessman, but Matthew deserves the award for keeping Sooty alive, because what
Yeah,
Harry didn't do, Harry lived for the way he thought Sooty should be, and that was his son. And Harry became, I don't want to say this because, you know, he was a genius, but it would have become old fashioned. And ultimately, it sort of got cut from the BBC. And the BBC axed it. It moved to ITV, who saved it. The BBC axed it because they felt it was sort of becoming a bit old fashioned. And it probably was. But Matthew, having kids of his own, was able to write stories and episodes that reflected what kids were into at that time. So suddenly it was all relevant and the stories resonated. And that's what kept it fresh and kept it, you know, throughout, got on TV 70s, 80s, 90s, because Matthew moved it on with the time. And I hope in a way I've done the same. I've tried to, because to keep it relevant to kids now, you know, Harry's stuff is wonderful to watch now, and some of it still works because I make a point of telling people it still works, but some of it might not work today. It would be deemed a bit old-fashioned. So, yeah. So,
yeah,
but in terms of loving the characters, for me, when I took over Matthew, it took a while. It took a while because when I first took over, I didn't own the rights to Sooty. I was employed to be their presenter. And I understand now why they didn't give me the ownership, let's say, in terms of the closeness that Matthew had, because they were protected of their brand. These guys had spent a lot of money on Sooty. They hadn't, you know, the face of it, or me or the presenter, the money wasn't invested in that. They'd invested in the characters, and they didn't really want someone to get too close to it because they couldn't own me. They couldn't own a person or a face. So they were a bit worried about letting anyone get too, you know, fixed to it in the way Matthew was. But when I bought the rights to it with my brother in 2008, they became my kids. You know, they were mine, because I hope I'm not waffling on here, and I've always been a bit. I'm not a big head, you know. I don't. But I know if me and David hadn't bought Sooty, it would not be here today. I know that. I believe that it would not have survived in the way it has. And Matthew agrees. So the way it survived when Harry had it, and Matthew for a long time, was on love. And I love these things, and they were my kids, and I had to. It was our mission, my brother's mission, to save it, to get on the television, and not for me to be famous. I've never wanted to be famous, ever. I've wanted to be successful, but I've never wanted to be famous, and therefore it was not about me getting on television. It was about saying to ITV, look, these characters are part of British culture, and they need to survive. We need to see them, and let's do a show that kids are going to love. And they gave me a second chance, and anyway, I'm going off. But yes, but the long-winded answer is
yes,
I love them.
fantastic. It is a great story, and we will touch on it a bit later on. I do want to rewind just slightly back to when you first were involved in Sooty properly, back in 1998. I mean, tell us about that day that phone call happened. I have heard this story on other interviews, and it's a great story when your agent phoned you out the blue and told you about it.
Yeah, I mean, what had happened was I had been working, doing the Vanishing Motorcycle and all those big illusions. At that time, every seaside town had a huge summer variety show where they'd have a big star at the top of the bill and a speciality act like a magician or somebody on the bill, and that would have been me. Well, what happened was those shows went into decline, and there was none left. And I got to the end of the season at Blackpool, which is the best summer season in the country, and that was the last summer season with speciality acts. My agent basically said, "You're out of work." You know, that was it. I had no work, and I sold temporarily all my big illusions. I mean, I sold them all because I thought I'm never going to work again, and I went back to the fun fair, tail between my legs. So, you know, I was running rides, and then I got a phone call from my agent, Stanley Dallas, and he said to me, "Are you?" And word for word, "Are you sitting down?" I went, "No." He said, "Matthew Corbett's retiring and you are in the frame." And I couldn't believe it. Could not believe it. It took a while to sink in because I hadn't done kid stuff. I'd been the support act on the Chuckle Brothers show for a long time, and I'd done a bit of pantomime, but never normally as the silly Billy. I was always, Dandini or the Prince or Aladdin or something that was, I wanted to be the silly guy. I did do a bit, but I was never in those parts. So it was a bit of a curveball for me. But they didn't want a typical children's presenter. They wanted someone who could do magic, big tick, and they wanted somebody that was not going to be that sort of happy, slappy, cheesy kids sing along. They wanted somebody that didn't come from that background. And I wasn't the only person up for it, by the way. There was 6 others for it. I don't normally say that because the story to the public is just easy. Matthew said him and off we went. There was a long process to make sure that they felt the right person had, been given the job. And I worked very hard to make sure that was me. And, I'm not lecturing anybody watching this, but they always say, well, you're very lucky. And anything in life, hard work equals luck. I spent 6 months because it was a 6-month process. I went to see Matthew's stage shows. I did every bit of research. I went down to Blockbuster Video. I watched every episode. I learned songs. I went down to Toys R Us. I bought a hand puppet. I sat and practiced. I found people in the magic circle that had worked with puppets, and I made them sit and watch me and clean me up and do my routines. I went to see a director who taught me how to act, because I was just, hey, everybody, this is pick a card, or watch this motorbike. I'd not done lines. And I did that. And I did that because I thought I have got to be armed with every trick in a book. Because if I lose this to somebody else, I don't want to look back and think, if only I'd taken acting lessons, if only I'd have just prepared. My Stanley Dallas said to me, because he was the guy, he was a guru of an agent. And he said to me after he'd said that, are you sitting down? He said, I said, oh, this is so lucky. He went, no, it's not. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Now you've got to go prepare. You've got to do it. And he said to me, and nobody knows this. He said, and get your teeth sorted out and sort your hair out. He said, your teeth need doing. These are all crowns. That was thanks to Stanley. Get your teeth done, and your hair looks like you've been pulled through a hedge backwards. I had a long blondie curly mullet of a haircut. And it was as brutal as that. He said, the camera's got to like you. This is very different television to stage and magic. This is a different genre. And I did all of that, before I eventually sat in front of them and did an audition, and then did a screen test and another screen test. And yes, when the phone call came, I just cried. I cried and I cried and I cried. And then had a great time.
Yeah, beautiful story. Love it. Love it. That's brilliant. I have heard you tell that story many times, but I think that's the most detailed version I've heard. So thank you. I'm very lucky.
Yeah. Well, often when you're doing a newspaper interview, they don't really want to know about 6 people and agents. They just want to go, Matthew Corbett says him, and that's kind of what Matthew says. Matthew actually said, why don't you change your name to Corbett? I went, no, we'll stick. That's a bit too much,
Fair enough. So in 1998, you were hired as one of the presenters of Sooty, along with Lyanna Bridges, and you started out in Sooty and Co on the final series, and you played shop helpers for Matthew. Do you remember your first day on Sooty and Co?
Very much. Yeah, life-changing, of course. I mean, it was the dream job, and I always thought that this would be a job for life. I mean, I just thought it would go on forever. So it did feel like the first day of a new life. I remember the episode. The first scene I shot wasn't as arriving in the shop. It was an episode called Psychic Sue, and I was in the restaurant welcoming Mr. Dwayne and his children Shane and Jane Dwayne for a meal. And I remember the lines. I can't remember the lines for anything else I've ever done, but I remember saying, do you remember when Sue said she could see into the future? I'd learned them. I spent months learning them. They were like, sort of ingrained, still are. But I remember the whole of the crew, including Matthew Corbett. There must have been 30, 40 people the other side of that camera there to see what I was going to be like, because it was like, okay, this is the guy we're stuck with for the next God knows how many years. So I was very nervous for them, and nervous to be good, and nervous because I was there and the cameras were pointing at me. But a day I'll never forget, and here we are 26 years later.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And around that same time as well, and I randomly thought about this literally today, and the whole lot is on YouTube if you want to watch it. around that time, Sooty celebrated his 50th anniversary, and at that point, CITV was live every day from Birmingham with Stephen and Danielle, and they did a whole week of programs. But there was also you and Lyanna in the studio all week, and the whole story was that Sooty hadn't turned up, but really they were all behind the scenes causing absolute mayhem. Do you remember that?
Vaguely,
Fair
vaguely,
enough.
very vaguely. I remember. I mean, I'm a a pal of Steve Mulhern's, and I think that's where we sort of formed a friendship back in the day when we were all young and new, and it was all new and exciting. And my memory of that week is primarily having a drink with him, to be honest, and getting all excited because, of course, he's a brilliant magician, so we were doing tricks and stuff. But everything I've done so much. But thanks for reminding me of that CITV week. Yeah, it was very, very special to be sat with Danielle and Stephen on those bean bags, having watched them. It was a great, great day. But I do remember it. Yeah, vaguely.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. It was a long time ago. Yeah, I remember it. I remember watching it, and yeah, somebody has put the entire lot on YouTube. So there we go. Something to look back on.
All right.
So Sooty and Co finished, and then it moved on to Sooty Heights, which ran for 2 series, and that was all about running a hotel, and that was still very much the Sooty and Co team still at that point, wasn't it? Because it still feels like Sooty and Co.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the magic of Sooty and Co that no one will ever replace was not only Matthew Corbett and his, brilliant presentation and hysterical comedy on screen, but he wrote the episodes, and and he knew how to do it. So if we were at a disadvantage, it wasn't. We had all the same crew, the same puppeteers, the same cameramen, exactly the same crew, all Matthew's team, but we didn't have the same writer because Matthew, he finished and didn't want to write anymore. But I think we got pretty, I'm quite proud of those episodes because I was new, Lyanna was new, we were new. They're good episodes, Sooty Heights. There's some funny ones. I remember dancing with Lyanna to the hottest place in town, which was and then Cleopatra came in and sang on one of the episodes. We were like, oh my God, Cleopatra. We had a great time. Yeah. But,
I was watching some the other day, and it's like, I mean, like the guests that you get on, there's an episode with Brian Blessed, who's, a trained Shakespearean actor, and all you're doing is pushing custard pies into each other's faces.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the case though for years. As even Matthew Corbett tell you, the people that wouldn't turn up to be on a chat show or be a guest, but they'd rock up for Sooty because either their kids liked it. I mean, I'm jumping in time, but I was wonderfully honoured to be part of Judi Dench's birthday celebrations just at the back end of last year, photographed with her and everything. But let me tell you, at the after party, I was there because her kids and her grandkids love Sooty. That's why I was there. I mean, she was lovely and she liked it, but yeah. Everybody loved it. So the famous people. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I should have asked Judi Dench. She's sort of retired now. But if I'd have only known what big fans they were, I think I'd have done anything to get her on. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
But, you'd be amazed how people will rock up for the Sooty show, and for no money because we never got any budget kids shows. So they come for the love, really, not for the money.
It's very cool. And I was just remembered actually you on about Stephen Mulhern that he was in one of the episodes as like your rival, and he was very stroppy. I remember that episode really well, actually. Remember that one?
I can't remember. All I remember about Stephen on that episode is his magic. He's really technically brilliant. Yeah. And he kept saying to me, "Is it okay? Does it look all right?" And I went, "What are you on about? You're brilliant. You're far better than me. Shut up. You don't need me to tell you it's all right. You know it's brilliant." So, but he's a very sort of humble person.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do remember that. I do remember that. Didn't he get covered in pink slime, or was that me that got covered? I can't remember.
I remember you getting covered in pink slime. I think he got covered in cake. There was a running gag that he wanted cake, and Sooty pushed it in his face, I think. He was supposed to be like somebody you went to magic school with, and he was coming to visit, and you didn't want him to know that you're not that as good at magic as he is, and and all the magic goes wrong, and he's like, "Haha, I am the better one," and yeah.
You know what's frightening when you talk about that? I mean, it's 24, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think of him as a very young sort of, but yeah, I mean, you think we've all been doing this for quarter of a century. Yeah, it's bizarre. And I watch some of that stuff on YouTube now, and I haven't got a clue. When I come on, it's the weirdest feeling. You think, I don't even remember. I don't remember anything. So I don't remember saying that word. I don't even know what happens.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling when you sort of do so much of it, and that's in my little world. Imagine in Steve Mulhern's world, even well, that means to, anyway, who knows? But then we were all kids then. It was great. It was all great.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, was it daunting for you that first day when you performed Sooty and Matthew's not there to guide you or help you anymore? You're on your own, basically.
He never helped me anyway. Matthew never helped me. He never helped me technically, ever. It was a joke. It was a joke what Matthew said to me. The first day I turned up for rehearsal, we went in the studio, and the new owners, who paid Matthew a huge amount of money for the rights, and said, right, okay, Matthew, we'd like you to teach Richard, and Lyanna actually was there, how to operate Sooty. And he literally sat in a room with me and said, right, you put it on your hand and wiggle it about. And that was it. And the sort of day-long workshop was not, we watched television, I think. We didn't do anything. But I mean, I don't know what we were expecting. But on hindsight, he could have given us a lot more. But I think he wanted us just to find it for ourselves. And we did.
Yeah.
But he didn't get involved at all because he'd retired. He was out the door. He'd been paid. He had his money, and he was out the door. And we never saw him hardly ever again. For a long time.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. And it was nice to find your own feet. I mean, it's actually surprisingly harder to operate a puppet than you think sometimes. I mean, I had my own set of Sooty puppets, and I'd recreate things. And the one thing I've found is trying to hold anything like that really hurts after a bit. Although I find it easy with my left hand, which is odd because I'm right-handed. So there we go. I don't know.
Well, you get used to it. I mean,
yeah,
it's used. What the thing that is weird, the more you do it, is that you begin to not know you're doing it. So, Sooty will be reacting or playing with something, and you'd be completely oblivious. And you find that once you really get into it, that when I write the scripts, because I write the TV ones now, along with some pals, Wink and Alex, and some other really talented people we've written with. But when I always edit them, and I break the back of most of them if I'm brutal. And I sit here in my office with, I know this moment was going to come, wasn't it? So here it is. I sit here, don't do that, remember? I sit here with Sooty and Sweep, who's over there. And I when I'm writing the episodes, I find that it's much easier to do it with them doing this, Sooty picks up, I don't know, what have we got here? Richard's mug. Now, don't bang it or don't look in it, because now it's much easier for me to do that. Now look, much easier for me to do that with him with me than it is to write without. So anyway, I don't know why I told you that, but there we go. Off on a tangent.
That's made my day. That's made my entire
I'll do
year.
It again to you later. But in terms of picking, so you do get that's what you develop the sixth sense and picking things up. I'll give you a little. I'll just do this. No sound today. But here we are, just so you can say you've had a mum. Oh my goodness! Now you can wave quietly, but can you see, Sweep? Just show everybody your paw. It's got a little bit of Copydex on that paw. Copydex is a wonderful glue. It dries like a dry rubber, and it means that you can sort of pick things up, and they sort of stick. So it makes holding things a lot easier. Right? Be quiet. Off you go. No squeaking today.
Happy days. That's great. Wonderful. You mentioned briefly that you performed on that show with Lyanna. I mean, what was it like to work with Lyanna? And are you still in touch? Have you seen each other since Sooty Heights?
We haven't seen each other since Sooty Heights, and it's a shame, really, because Lyanna was great. I'm sure she still is, but she was a beautiful soul and adored Sooty. I think for the first couple of seasons of Sooty, I don't think it was a bit of an experiment, wasn't it, without Matthew? And she thought, like we all thought, that the pair of us would kind of be there forever. She was certainly very committed to it, indeed, very committed to it. And she just ceremoniously didn't get a contract renewed, and it was a big shock. And she took it badly because she was invested emotionally in it, as I was, and she did. And I can understand why, because I know how I'd have took it. And it was a sad day. It was a very awkward day. And I haven't spoken to her since, other than she called me and she said, did you know what was going on? And nobody knew anything, but and I haven't spoken to her because I think and I don't know, she might even watch this, I don't know, but she's remembered with great fondness, and I think it would, to her, I know, and actually I'm going to say it. She adored Sooty and Sweet, and she loved Sweet. I mean, Sweet was like her child, and it must have been for her a grieving time. I think more so, I think it really was. It wasn't about the money or the fame. It was about her not being with, I would imagine, and her family were lovely, and I got very close friends with them all, and so it was sad. It was sad. She went on to work present a radio show and stuff. I think she I think she carried on doing things, which was great. But we didn't make those decisions. It wasn't down to me. It wasn't down to any of us. It was ITV and what they wanted. It might have been. I don't know why. She didn't. She didn't do anything other than be brilliant, really. So
fair enough. I know that happens in TV a lot and media. So after that, from what I understand, the company that bought it off Matthew was bought by another company, and there were some changes. It still remained in a hotel, but it had a refit, and it was called Sooty, and Vicky joined the cast. And as you said, you didn't really own the rights at that point. Tell us about that time, because I understand for yourself that it wasn't always the greatest experience.
Do you know, I mean, I don't know how many fans are going to find this interesting, but it's very rarely anyone asks about Lyanna. I mean, I'll always answer whatever anyone asks because they don't remember that. They kind of remember the newer stuff. But it was kind of crazy because when they said, well, Lyanna's not going to be in the show and everything, I thought, okay, well, maybe they're going to pare it all back and it's going to be just a single guy presenter. They're going to bring in more guests and stuff. And then the next series, they say, but here's Vicky Lee Taylor. And it's like, oh, okay. So okay. Now, funnily enough, I haven't seen Vicky or heard from Vicky Lee Taylor in 20-something years. And just a few days ago, I went to see her. We got in touch again, bizarrely through a bizarre sort of meeting with somebody. And I went to see her be incredible in Mrs. Doubtfire in the West End. And we sat with a cup of coffee and had a hug. And I've not seen her in 22 years. And do you know what she said? We were talking about, she went, oh, it was so awkward the first day, wasn't it? Do you remember? Because I came in and because we were all a bit like, because we all loved Lyanna. It wasn't we didn't like Vicky. It's just it was all a bit weird. But yes, you were absolutely right. So I saw Vicky just a few days ago, having not seen her forever, and she just looks exactly the same, and she's brilliant in the West End. It was a strange time. It was a strange time. We had some new owners, and they wanted to make Sooty a global TV show. They had big plans for it, and I remember the producer, a new producer, sitting me down and saying, we are severing the human connection. You and nobody will ever operate Sooty again, but certainly we'll have none of this business. That's all gone. But I tell you where it was going, because I found out where it was going. It was they were going to get rid of all the human presenters. This is what I'm told reliably. And it was going to become dare I say the word, puppet only show. So it could be dubbed into multi-languages. And that's the way it was. That was the way I think they thought it might go. And this sort of transient period, let's strip away the humans. Let's start diluting the format a bit, bring in new characters, Mickey the cat. Let's reinvent Butch the bulldog, which was kind of a reinvented Butch. It wasn't the Butch we sort of knew from the Corbett era. Let's bring in lots of characters so that when the humans, and let's bring in talking characters, because that's why Sue is so important. Harry brought Sue in because she could talk, and it meant that when Harry wasn't in the scene or when Matthew's not in the scene, the three of them could have a scene together and Sue can translate what the other guys are saying or thinking. So let's bring in Mickey the cat, let's reinvent Butch the bulldog, so we've got lots of speaking characters so we can drive it forward without presenters. That's the way it would have gone. So I'm diversing, I'm giving you a lot of info here, but it wasn't a happy time because it sort of became not the Sooty show. It wasn't the Sooty show because they were aiming in a different direction, I think. And it didn't help, I suppose, because Matthew Corbett had kept a little bit in touch with me and he'd seen it. And I had no control over scripts or anything. I was just there to say whatever they told me to say and do what they told me to do. And Matthew said if my father could see this, he would turn in his grave. And I felt awful. I felt responsible. And what was then the fledgling internet chat rooms were saying Richard Cadell has ruined the Sooty show. And I was heartbroken because I just wanted it to be this wonderful thing that I'd grown up with and could easily be. And what ultimately happened is ITV went, oh, this isn't very good. Nobody's watching it. At the end of the day, it was 4 million when we did Sooty and Co and Sooty Heights, and it was, whatever it was, it didn't really resonate. So for whatever reason, they went, well, don't want any more of that. That was it. End of. Sooty was off the air, ceremoniously axed. People don't know that or remember that, but we were off. It was finished. And the head of CITV at the time, I remember him phoning me up and saying, it's nothing you've done. He said, but you need to hear it from me first. He said, you've no idea, as the head of ITV Children's, how guilty I am to be the man that axes Sooty after 40-something, 50 years on the telly. He said, I feel awful, but it's just about money and ratings, and, off it goes. And that was it. So that was a weird time, knowing that you were part of something that wasn't quite hitting the mark, or I didn't believe was hitting the mark. It was a different. Maybe the guys making it thought it was brilliant. I'm not knocking them, but I felt this is not very good, and it wasn't.
Yeah. It's certainly a tough time. I remember watching that series. And I suppose,
did you like it?
Well, as an 8-year-old,
what did you think? Am I too cruel? Am I too?
I remember thinking. I mean, I would have been about 8 or 9. I remember thinking, what have they done to the puppets? What have they done to the voices?
Oh God,
I remember that. But as watching it back now as an adult, I do think it's not the best. But as a child, you don't quite have those. You don't quite have those opinions. But I do remember thinking, what have they done to the design of it? And that, and I didn't like that at all. And there was far less silliness in it. It seemed to always have like some kind of moral message in it. I seem to remember.
Absolutely, yeah. We all had to say sorry at the end. I'm sorry for squirting you, Sooty. I'm sorry for squirting you, Sue. And it went on. Let's all celebrate with a banana. You can have a cake. Oh no, we're gonna eat healthy. We couldn't. It was all. And I suppose they were doing. They meant well. But you see, what kids do is they don't do what you did. They just turn off and flick over and watch something else, and that's what was happening. And ultimately, it's some numbers game. They need people watching it so they can sell the advertising. When people start turning off, they just look at the numbers. Oh, that's not working.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it went away. It all finished, and I went back to the fun fair, spinning the waltzer cars. And that's what happened to me. People don't really. So there was I say I've done it for 26 years. I actually probably haven't, because there was a big gap where nobody was doing it. So
yeah, that's fair enough. So going back to the hotel series, there was a story that you told at the Nottingham show, which was beautiful, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to tell it today. I'll give you a little bit of a memory jog. It was about you said about them wanting to sever the human connection, and one day there was an episode that was running a bit short.
When I was told that the Sooty show were going to cut my connection, or the human connection with Sooty, I said, why? And they went, it's too old-fashioned. We're not doing any of that stuff again. And I'd said to them, please, 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 you're making a mistake. Watch this old black and white video of Harry Corbett doing some classic stuff. It's brilliant. It's hysterical. It's great. And it's clever. Let's do it. No, we don't want to watch it. It's old-fashioned. We're not going down that route. Decision made. End of. Wouldn't even put the videotape in the player. End of. Okay. And then we're shooting this series where I'm not allowed to operate Sooty, and it's this weird thing, and it's going to be whatever it is. And the episodes are running short. And this same producer said to me, could you do something to fill 2 minutes at the end of the episode? Because we're in real trouble here. We got just too short. And I said, well, it's Sue's birthday party. Why don't I do a trick at the birthday party? Well, that's good. I said, well, here's the thing. It's going to be Sooty doing the trick, but I've got to operate him, because if I don't, it won't work. And with great reluctance, and sort of slight, the look in the eyes, and they went, okay then. And I did a trick with an egg that goes in a box that eventually finishes up hit on my face and running down the face. And I used the same props that I had saved from a big throwout, which were Harry Corbett's props. And I used the same prop that was on that black and white video of him doing the thing. And after I'd done the trick, they rushed down and they went, oh, these are great. It was a great thing. Thank you so much. And well, actually, I've just performed for you using Harry's props, and I've performed for you word for word, move for move, the 1954 presentation of Harry Corbett's egg trick. Now do you understand where I'm coming from? And you know what? They hated me for it. They absolutely didn't go. It was they didn't like the fact that I'd kind of gone, see, they didn't like it. But it's still there on YouTube, and if you Google Harry's stuff, I think you can find Harry doing it. And I've got the actual box. I was using the same prop. It was great. So it was a bit of a told you so moment. But
I remember the episode because I actually had that one taped. So when you played the Harry Corbett version, I was watching it going, I know this. I know where this is going. And then when you played your version, yeah, I had that one on video. So I knew. I was like,
The only thing was slightly different. The only thing that was different was that when Harry did it, Sooty at the end, he said, I think Sooty may have hit the original versions may have hit Harry with a hammer on the head, which broke the egg through his hat. Sooty hit me with a wand because you couldn't hit people over the head with hammers. 40 years later, they cleaned up on things like that. Apart from that, it was beat for beat the same.
That's a really cool story, and I do love that story. So we'll jump to, you've already said, it was cancelled. There was a few years where you weren't part of it. We jumped to 2008. You find out that the rights are up for sale. You take a massive gamble. Tell us about that time and getting it back on the air a few years later.
Well, yeah, I mean, so there'd been a gap of 4 or 5 years where I had run the fun fair with my brother. And by this point, it was a thing. It was becoming a theme park. We had big roller coasters and huge rides and lots of it was a big operation. So when my friend called and said, "Have you seen the back of the Guardian newspaper today?" And again, Google it. It's on the internet. Google Guardian Sooty for sale. It's the same thing I saw in hard print. I remember coming into the office. We had a little porter cabin on the fun fair behind the log flume. And I remember saying to my brother, I don't care what this costs. We have to buy this. We've got to put this right. We've got to have it. And fortunately, by that point, the theme park was a big enough business that we could say, okay, let's use the collateral of this business to raise this big chunk of money. Because without it, we couldn't have done it. I mean, the stars were aligning. If I'd have just been a little, not a little, but a presenter, on a jobbing presenter, I would never have had that kind of clout to go to to look at our business and think, okay, now this is going to finance this. But once the nasty bit of the money was out of the way and we bought it, it was a kind of, okay. And then my brother said, what are we going to do with it? I said, well, we've got to get it back on television. If we don't, we'll use it on the fun park somehow. We'll do little shows and just use it because people still remember it. So we got to get it back on television. So we made an episode called The Big Day Out, and we shot it. It was a pilot because ITV said, we don't want it back. No, damaged goods, no thanks. And I said, well, then eventually I kept going at them. And eventually they said, well, make a pilot then, show us. And I said to my brother, we need to throw a lot of money at this because this is a one shot. We spent a fortune on buying it and we need to throw a bit more at it. So we filmed The Big Day Out, and most of my family and friends are in it as extras, and it's on YouTube. It's an hour long, and we filmed it all at our fun fair, and we took it back. It's a great location by the sea and all that. Because I couldn't afford a studio. I mean, it was done for cost reasons. But what it did do is it did teach us that Sooty works great in the outside world. So which is why I always try and keep Sooty away from the studio. We do some studio stuff in what was the little caravan, but I like to be outside in the real world. But there's no studio costs. You're at the mercy of the weather, but you still it's cheaper. So we did this Big Day Out, and I took it back to ITV. We played it to them. They never laughed. This lady, she didn't laugh once. Oh God, this is never going to happen. And then she just looked at me at the end and she went, "Could you do 26 episodes?" And I went, "Yes." She said, "But I'm worried we can afford it because that location must have cost you a fortune." She had no idea that was mine and my brother's fun fair. And I was just about to go, well, as a matter of fact, it doesn't cost anything, because my agent who was sat next to me kicked me under the table and went, yeah, it cost a fortune to hire that fun park. But, it's because he was ready to do the mechanics of the deal. But we got it. So that's that.
Fantastic stuff, and it's brilliant that you've made it a success all over again. And I have watched the episodes of the new series, and I love it. And what was also brilliant is in that first run of those shows, you managed to get Matthew back on for one day. Did it take a lot of convincing, or was he, really up for it straight away, like for one more day to be back in it?
No, he couldn't wait because there were two reasons he did it. A, he was a pal, and B, it was his way of saying, this is how it should be done. And I know that's a horrible thing to say, but I talk to him all the time about, this is going pear-shaped, Matt. What do I do? And when I got this, the new series, I phoned him up, told him what I was going to do with it. And he was there in a heartbeat. And for me, that was so special because for the fans, for people to go, okay, well, if he's put his name into it, it must be all right. And it sent a little message. So I was pleased. And it was great to have him around. Of course, the same old crew there. So it's like, hey, And he sent himself up, and it was only a small part. He was only there for a day. But he wanted to be in on it, and he was.
Yeah, great stuff. And, it's brilliant, really, because, a lot of children's television since like the mid-noughties has changed because we've got more channels. A lot of it's online. A lot of it's CGI. There's not a lot of British-made stuff and certainly not live action. So it's incredible you managed to bring something back like that, really, because there hadn't been for so long,
Yeah.
really, at that
And
point.
even now, I mean, they show sadly, I mean, the dynamic of children's television is finished. The money that was raised by advertising has been shot to oblivion because all the kids are watching YouTube and stuff. So in terms of making new episodes, they just can't afford to cover the costs of making them. And we do it as cheap as we can. But thankfully, ITV repeat all the old stuff on loop, on loop, on loop, on loop. And, a bit like Only Fools and Horses, they've not really dated most of the episodes. So, when I do my live shows, I'm getting all these 2, 3, 4-year-olds that are watching it for the first time. But the great thing is that it's still on. Those episodes are still shown every day. I'm very grateful for ITV for keep running them. It still pulls in their highest, preschool slot. It still pulls them in. It's fresh audience all the time.
And I understand, because I think the last series was back in 2018, but I understand that a new series has been filmed recently.
Yeah. Yes. Now, I mean, this is more of an in-depth interview, so people can understand. People say, when you're doing the next series, it's very costly to make I mean, it's a fortune to make these things. And now the ITV budgets have been so slashed, I can't afford to turn out those Sooty shows. They were tens of thousands of pounds per episode just to make them. Technical, but it wasn't nobody. It was just the technical bit of it all, the time and everything. So this is now being produced by someone who's become a friend, based in Malaysia, being edited and put together in India. With lots of people investing money. So that's why it's taken so much time. So we filmed all the live action bits in 2000, and I don't know, it was a couple of years ago, 22 maybe, and then it's gone over to them to do something a bit different. So there is going to be a bit of a surprise, but I'm happy and confident that we're not, we're going to push it in a slightly different direction, but fans need not worry. But I haven't had to finance it. So I've been at the mercy of this wonderful producer getting all this money together, and they've thrown a lot at it. So when is it going to be on the air? When is it going to be ready? I spoke to them last week. It went a bit quiet because the money fell away. I've seen a teaser for it, which is where it's at the minute. And then from there on in, they'll start cutting that. But the exciting thing is that the current series that you just talked about is most likely at the moment being discussed. They're going to show it in India. The Indian people who are putting it together have got so in love with it, they want to put it on the air in India. I mean, they're going to dub it, which will be interesting. But that's hopeful. It's not confirmed, but we're talking to them. They seem keen. So long answer to your question. It's done. It's in the can. It's going to be great. Hopefully this year they keep, the money's in place. So, but
fine.
It's not me in control completely. So I have to. That's why I don't have the ability to say exactly when.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Hopefully it'll be all okay, and we trust you. Don't worry.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, going back to going back to 'cause we were just saying about, like, how children's television changed, and usually a lot of it's CGI. We did have a little chat about this off air. There is a story that I saw a while back, because back in the mid-90s there was a Sooty cartoon. I do remember it.
Yeah.
There's apparently a story that when you got the rights, you got a copy of them on the tapes, and you didn't like it, and you destroyed them. Is that true?
Everybody hates me for it, but yeah, I did. Well, partly because it was a huge, great big box of videotape. I mean, it's taken up a load of space. It was part of the new culture to try and make Sooty a worldwide thing. And I know fans look back on it with affection. I never watched very many of them because the minute Sweep started speaking and Scampy started speaking, I just thought, whoa, hang on, this isn't the Sooty show. This is not the Sooty show. So I don't consider I threw away anything that was ever part of the Sooty show. Do I wish I'd kept them? Probably, just to have had a look now, because so many people got upset with me. I don't like upsetting anyone. But thankfully, one of the guys I know researched and said that there are some master copies still with ITV. That might be the case. I'm not aware of that, but could be the case. And thankfully, people have recorded them, and they are on the internet for those that want to enjoy them. But yes is the answer. I needed to clear space, and I thought, well, I've got no way of playing these because they're massive tape, and B, it's not the Sooty show, so I didn't. And it would have been very off-brand of me to start pumping them out again, because I wanted to put it back to what it was. And the cartoon was never a big rating success. And you have to remember, broadcasters want to look at how they perform. So anyway, so there was a bit more to it. But yes, I am that man. Sorry to everyone. Let me use your platform to apologize, because I know some people got very upset about it. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I do believe that there are copies somewhere, and yeah, they're on
Good.
YouTube anyway.
Well, I'm pleased. I hope that's the case.
Well, glad we've cleared that up. I wanted to kind of share one of my own memories, actually, and I've only ever gone and seen pantomime once in my whole life, and it was in 2002, and it was you and Sooty, and it was Goldilocks and the Three Bears at Wolverhampton Grand. I'm actually in Wolverhampton as we speak, I should point out, and the theatre's only 5 minutes across the city. And I've been trying to remember it, actually, but I remember it was you and Frank Bruno and Sophie Lawrence. So that's a memory of mine that I've got, but I don't remember much apart from I can recall you and another character going into the audience with piping bags full of foam.
Yeah.
People.
We did the water. We did the what they call the slosh scene with it. It was the famous clown Charlie Crowley, great friend of mine, legendary clown for Blackpool. It was me, Charlie Crowley, Sophie Lawrence, Cal Harmon from Brushstrokes. Big show. And I remember I was on stage with Sooty when I had to introduce Frank Bruno, and the audience went nuts when he came up. Bruno, I had to G them up. Great show. And I love the Wolverhampton Grand. You've got the most beautiful theatre there. I have great affection, and I'm still involved in the pantomime there at arm's length. Yeah, I have a lot of time for. They're wonderful people, and I help them with some of the magic effects in their pantomimes, because yeah, that's a lot of fun. So I can't tell you too much. They've got some big surprises for this year, that's for sure. Some good stuff coming up.
Cool. I just wanted to share that memory. It just come back to me.
Well, I'm glad you remembered it. I'm glad you remembered.
Yeah, I remember that. And I seem to remember that for some reason it featured the song Hey Baby by DJ Otzi a lot as well. I seem to have that random memory.
I think that's me, probably. Was that my running?
I think so, yeah.
Every time I come on, I get the audience to shout something. That would probably be Hey Baby. Yeah, I do still do that now. I still have a running. I don't do Hey Baby, but I still do. I'm still doing the same jokes, basically.
That's fair enough. It works. It works. And it's cool that you're still doing panto and the live shows and that, still to this day. So talking about like new stuff and that, and I'm sure you're probably tired of being asked this, but I'm going to ask it. There was talk, I don't know, some years ago now about stuff like a Sooty film, and I also heard something about a Sooty biopic. I mean, whatever happened to all that?
I know about the biopic. There was a documentary. That was somebody, a BBC producer, very keen. He's a fan primarily, I suppose, but he's also a BBC producer. He put a documentary together. and I think he ran into some problems with the costs of getting rights to show all the clips. So that's been seen by a select audience, but never broadcast. The movie, oh my God, the movie still to this day, I only emailed somebody yesterday, the movie consumed my life for years. We together, the script that me and Wink Taylor and Alex had, everybody's had input into this incredible script that sat there, and it was going to have, and it cost millions of pounds to make a movie. And lots of people will tell you they've got the money and they want to make it, until you say, okay, well, let's start next June and can we have some money? And then you don't hear from them again. And I've got, that journey I've done so many times now, probably a dozen times with different investors and different. But I've got a friend of mine, one of my greatest friends, made his own film, which was a box office smash, and it took him. He said, "Yeah, Richard, it's going to take you 6 to 8 years. Is what it takes. Don't rush." So bizarrely, I decided to put the movie to bed and never try and devote. So it was taking, my time is very valuable, and I was putting hours and hours and hours and hours and a lot of money into trying to make it hit the screen. And I threw it in the bin, not literally, but I parked it and said, I've got better things to do with my life. I tried, it didn't work. Couldn't get anyone to put their money where their mouth was. They all love it until it's, so let's just leave it. And then a couple of 3 weeks ago, somebody phoned me up and said, this movie, well, we love it. We've got the money. And I went, oh, here we go. Yes, we've really got the money this time. Really? Yes. Okay, send us through the bitch dot. Well, I mean, who knows? But it's looking like, like that might still just come out of the ashes. The script is brilliant. It's brilliant. And what I love about the script, it's taken years to keep rewriting. I'm not going to rewrite it again. I've had I've lived it and breathed it. But I just want to give anyone who, in case it never gets shown, I'll tell you a little bit about the story. It's about, it'll make you laugh, hysterically laugh. But there's a lovely current where Sooty is trying to find his real mother. He's trying to find the lady that stitched him together in 1948 and put him in the joke shop window. We're in the modern times, but he can't understand why that lady would have left him and sold him. Oh. So you've got all the nonsense, but underneath all of that, there's something that, and I tell you what, the last scene, even as I speak to you now, I know what it is, and I'm welling up because I know what the last scene is, and I wrote it. And when I read it, I can't get to the end of it because it's just, and that's why I wanted to make the film, because I wanted people to go, oh, this is hysterical. Oh my God, this is funny. Oh, well, this is big. And that's that star. But at the end of it, I wanted them to say, we never expected that. We just, oh, wow. That's why we love it. And so if it never happens, that's the way it was going to go.
Okay, no, fair enough. That's fantastic, and honestly, fingers crossed. I'll be there to watch it as soon as it's out. Fantastic stuff. No, that's great. I hope it happens. And the biopic thing, actually, I was watching an interview with Matthew on, I think it was Lorraine, and it was mentioned, but this was 10 years ago, so it was probably an idea that was just thrown about at the time. I don't know, but I have watched the documentary. It was shown in Derby last year. I did enjoy that. That was really good. Very well detailed. It is a shame that it's struggling to be shown widely, but I can see why, because it had so much footage. And I know some of it's owned by Granada, some of it's Thames, some of it's the BBC. And
yeah, the cost. And also Jeff, the guy that put it together, as you say, I think it runs for 2 hours, maybe. Is it a 2-hour thing?
Yeah.
And I think for it to be broadcast, the dilemma he's in is that it would need to be 45 minutes. And how do you give a 75 years of Sooty with all the incredible journey that he's had and all the people involved? I mean, it's a mission to get it in 2 hours, I'd imagine, but I think that's probably another dilemma. But anyway, it exists for those of you that went to Derby. So.
Yes, indeed. So in the documentary, and also you mentioned this when you performed in Nottingham, that you were given one of the early surviving Sooties by the original producer, and it's a beautiful story. Tell us about that.
Well, yes. So what had happened was, when Harry Corbett got his first TV break, he was given the break by a fellow called Trevor Hill back in the early 50s, and Trevor produced Harry's very first TV series, and as a thank you, Harry Corbett gave Trevor the Sooty that they'd used for that series, one of the very earliest puppets. And a lot of people think there is an oldest surviving Sooty. There isn't. Matthew Corbett told me that his dad used to throw them away every time they got a bit dirty. He'd go and buy a new one, but this is before Sooty was on telly. He had no idea it was going to become so huge. So the earliest ones, really, officially, were the ones that were used on the telly in the first series. So Harry gave this Sooty puppet to Trevor Hill, and then some 70 years later, or whenever it was, when I met Trevor, because of this documentary, Trevor reached into his bag and pulled out this. Here he is. And that is very different looking, but nevertheless, this is how he looked back in the day when people didn't even realize he was yellow. They thought he was white, because black and white TV. And Trevor had never had children, him and his wife. They'd produced wonderful children's shows, but never had kids. And I think they lived through the shows they made for the BBC for children. And he said to me, I want you to have this. And I cried real tears, and I couldn't take it from him. He was in his 90s now. He passed away last year, but he was well into his 90s when I met him. And he just, the way he looked at me when he gave me, it was like he was passing it on. And I felt hugely honored that he would do that. And this is so whether this is the oldest one, we don't know, but it's certainly, aren't you? You look wonderful, don't you, for all this, for all these years you've been in the show. I'm going to put you back down again. You'll be good. Say goodbye. So that's the story. And so I cried my eyes out when he gave it to me. And it's probably the nicest moment. It felt, I never met Harry Corbett. I wish I had. I never met him. He was alive. He was, he passed away by the time I came on the scene. But when I do that, I'm sort of aware that, what that is. So that's my connection to Harry.
It is a beautiful story, and there's so much history with Sooty. You could talk about it for many more hours, but it's been great hearing your story and how your journey has been, and may long it continue. You're still doing the live shows, and hopefully there will be the future series and the films. So yeah, it's all good stuff to look forward to.
And don't forget, I'm hugely proud of the fact that there's now Sootyland. It's a theme park down in Exeter that have built Sootyland, and I didn't do that. They came to me and said, "Can we do it?" And they spent a lot of money. These beautiful rides, and there's a stage show every day. So it's kind of immortalized him to children that maybe not even discovered him yet. They go through the gates of that incredible park with all those hundreds of thousands of visitors. And by the time they leave, they're all fans. So it's wonderful. And Matthew said, just to nail this on the head, when we were talking about Sootyland and everything that's happening right now, he said, if my dad could see this, he'd be tickled pink. And I think having had the conversation 20 years ago when he said completely the reverse, that for me was a defining moment. I felt, well, my work's not done, but kind of done.
Fantastic stuff. I have to say, as a fan of the show, you've done a great job with it, and we owe you a lot for making it a success again, because I think you're right on what you said earlier. I don't think it would have come back otherwise. It would have just been something that we look back on.
It wouldn't have done. It wouldn't have done, and the social media or the TikTok, the Facebook. I mean, I fund and finance all of that. I like to engage with the fans. We give them fun stuff. It's not, all the time with that. I've got to say, things like fans watch this, I do get upset sometimes when they go, "Oh, Richard's rubbish," or "He was never as good. Matthew Corbett the best," and they remember him being the best. I'm going to tell you, Matthew Corbett was the best. He was. I grew up watching him. He's hysterical. He thought of all the ideas. He was the best, but the choice is either you wouldn't have ever had, it would have gone away and we'd be talking about something that finished 20, 30 years ago, or you've got little old me and my version of it. So I like to sort of think sometimes that when these guys knock it, I think, well, I've given it my best shot. But even I'm the first to want to say, yes, he was. I agree with you. I agree. But he was a one-off. He grew up with it all his life. He knew every trick in a book. And he was a very talented, and still is a very talented man. So, but thanks for your compliments.
It's my great pleasure.
For quite a while.
It's my great pleasure, and it's been just incredible to actually have a chat with you. I never thought it would ever happen. So I'm very, very grateful for that. I did have one random question that came into my head actually, that I just thought, I wonder if that happens. You're doing Sooty and that, and people see you on the telly. So you must get recognised a lot when you're just out and about doing, what any normal person does, like out shopping or out having a meal or whatever. Do people stop you and they expect you to have Sooty on you at every moment? And you're like, well,
Yeah, yeah.
no.
Well, let me tell you the honest truth. So I get very, very rarely do I get recognised. I've got the beard now and I look a bit older. No, I don't. And I love it like that. I never wanted to be famous. I like my little quiet little life, and I never wanted all that. Some people want that. They feed off that. It's the last thing I'd want. So actually, I quite enjoy the fact. Sometimes I walk around the supermarket and you see a kid looking at me and they sort of tug on their mum, sort of look, and I'll just sort of carry on going. And sometimes if I'm, they'll say, "You look like the guy of Sooty," and normally I'll say, a lot of people say that. I'm not one to go, "Yes, I am." But whenever I travel, in the Sooty van or in my car, I do have Sooty. Because Matthew Corbett and Harry Corbett, especially Harry, if the kids really do know who you are, they expect him to be there. And if I've got the time, I love just popping him over the windscreen or through the window, and that's because that child is going to remember that forever. And I love to be able to what a privilege it is to do it. So yes, if I do get recognised and I'm near the car, I don't walk around with him in my pocket. I get people messaging me, "Can you just do a quick birthday message? My little girl's 6 today." Friends, 6 today. It's like, mate, I'm in the middle of Tesco. They just expect that I'm going to go, "Oh yeah," But but that's nice. It's a compliment.
Yeah, that's cool. So, Richard, it has been genuinely an absolute pleasure to chat with you about Sooty and in depth. It's something I'll never forget. And I was wondering whether we could say goodbye in the time-honoured tradition.
Well, only if I could bring the probably one of the very first Sooties that ever waved goodbye to the camera. Well, there he is. So you want to do it with me, yeah?
Okay.
So you have to wave. You have to look, and normally look a bit pained because something terrible will have happened that you'll have done. So we just look and we say, "Bye-bye,
everybody. Bye-bye." A massive thank you to Richard Cadell for taking the time to answer all of my questions so brilliantly, and I do really feel privileged to have spoken with him. It's someone I'd wanted to get on the podcast ever since the first series, so I'm glad I finally did. Also, thank you for watching and listening, and there will be another edition coming up soon, so look out for that. Until then, take care and goodbye.